Thank you very much for having me. So, I think good start to the day. I had the privilege of attending a couple of sessions in the morning. I think, and just before we get into what I'd like to say, two comments. Yes, in our region, it is difficult to be an entrepreneur. Among other things is the pressure that we all face from our family. So you can just imagine when I told my parents in 2012 that I'm going to leave my consulting job and start a taxi business, what kind of reaction they had, right? They almost made me quit Careem in the first 6 months. It was a bit tough to convince them that there is something big that can be made out of it. So entrepreneurs have it especially hard in the region, not just because of the funding constraints and the market adoption, but also because of the internal struggles in their family. And I faced it personally, so can completely relate to it and attest to it. Second, yes, it is possible, as Hannah said, to make software or apps out of Pakistan and make them global. And I think Careem is a prime example of it. Most of the Careem app and the technology was developed in Pakistan, continues to be developed in Pakistan. And today Careem is operating pretty much in the entire region, all the way from Morocco to Pakistan, includes about 11 countries. There are 700 million people that live in the region that have access to the Careem service and are using it. And it's a technology that is made in Pakistan. So it can be done, and thanks for bringing it up. Acha, so I grew up in Karachi, and I went to school in St. Peter's, St. Michael's, and St. Patrick. And for some of you who are a bit older and maybe went to the same schools, you'll know there was a very nice man named Bishop Lobo. So Bishop Lobo would, every morning we would have the assembly, and Bishop Lobo would go up on stage and he would tell a story. And I'm sure like many of you, I heard a story every day in my school years. But I don't remember many stories, but I remember one. And that story was that life is like a boat. So that's why there is a boat on this on the slide. And the two oars in the boat. One oar is your hard work, and the other oar, he was a religious man, so he called it prayers or blessing. If you just work hard and you don't have the blessings, then you'll go around in circles. But if you simply keep on praying, hoping that great things will happen to you, you'll go around in circles as well. So you actually need both of these things to push ahead. And I think the story of Careem so far has been this as well. Yes, we have worked hard. We managed to do many things right, and we have been blessed with some success up until now. But if it wasn't for the barakat and the support and the blessings that we received, we probably would not be where we are today. So I'll walk you through the first half, the first oar, which is hard work and which is what we did, and the rest is, things just happened for us. Now, just a quick snapshot of where Careem is today. And I think many of you have heard that we've become a billion-dollar business. Since we were started in the Middle East, we're not calling it a unicorn, we're calling it a unique camel. But just in terms of numbers, the service is available in 11 countries, as I mentioned, all the way from Morocco to Pakistan. There are 50 cities in the region that we serve, and they include most of the big cities, but they're starting to include a lot of smaller tier 2 and tier 3 cities in the network as well. For example, in Saudi, we're present in 25 cities. In Pakistan already, we're present in 6 cities, and inshallah, many more will come this year. So the network has become quite widely available. We have acquired, or the service has been adopted by about 8 million customers, and there are 180,000 captains or drivers that are benefiting from the service and earning a living from it today. We are supported by 1,000 colleagues, so we're a headcount of 1,000. We don't call our team members employees, we call them colleagues. And the company has raised about $400 million in funding. Now, as I was thinking of this thing, and Junaid gave me the title, the billion-dollar mindset, and I was like, okay, how do I know what it means, right? What kind of mindset? So I started reflecting on what are the key learnings that helped us get to where we are today. And so I've distilled them to 4 things, and I'll walk them through now. So the first one is think big. If you're going to be opening a store in some part of Karachi, it's going to be difficult to become a billion-dollar business. So the first thing, very naturally, very logically, that you have to do if you want to build a big business, if you want to build a multi-billion-dollar business, is the opportunity or the market that you target has to be big. And it just follows very logically. Now, in our case, there were 2 stories that led us to wanting to build something big. And the company was initially started by myself and Magnus Olsson. He's a Swedish guy who I worked with at McKinsey. And both of us had our own reasons to wanting to do something big. And Magnus' story was that in 2011, which is a few months before we started Careem, he had some bleeding in his brain, and he was told by the doctors at that time that he's probably not going to make it. And even before he went into the surgery, he was told that there is a 15% chance that he's not going to come out at the other end of the surgery. Now you can imagine he was a 30-year-old guy at that time, faced with the eventual reality. Life becomes very clear in that moment. And he came out with that experience with the resolve that he will build something really, really big and that he wants to leave a legacy on the world. So that was his story and his desire to build something big. For me, it was not as life-threatening. And this is a story that I've shared with some people in the Careem team already a few times. In 2011, the firm where I was working, McKinsey, they wanted to open an office in Pakistan. And Dominic Barton, the head of McKinsey, would often joke that Pakistan is the biggest country in the world where McKinsey doesn't have an office. There are 200 million people, right? It's a big country, as you have seen multiple times, but McKinsey did not have an office. So there was a small team that was set up to explore the setting up of the McKinsey office. And I was already thinking of leaving and doing something different. So they're like, man, who's going to make a bet on Pakistan? Why don't you go and try it? Even if you don't succeed, it's fine, you're thinking of leaving anyways. But in that process, we had to make a list of companies that we could serve in Pakistan. Because if a consulting firm like McKinsey comes into the country, they need to serve someone. And for lack of a better benchmark, we said, man, if a business is less than $1 billion, it's going to be difficult for us to serve them. So we set a benchmark at $1 billion. And guess how many billion-dollar businesses we found in Pakistan at that time? This is 2011. Any guesses? 5? 0? 1? Yes, there was at least one business in Pakistan at that time, outside of oil and gas. There's OGDC, PSO, PPL. They're multi-billion-dollar businesses, but they were just blessed with things, right? They were just given a natural resource that they mined and became a big business. But outside of that, at that time, I remember the only billion-dollar business in Pakistan was Angro. And that was also just touching $1 billion, right? Just touching $1 billion. And the billion-dollar number is an arbitrary number. Forget about that number, what it means. But the fact that we, as a nation of 200 million people, haven't built these large corporate institutions that some other parts of the world are so prolific at building was a bit embarrassing, was a bit shocking. And there was a desire to go out and change it. Now, we all dream and we all desire these things, but that was sort of the turning point in my thing that if you're going to go out and build something, let's make sure that it's really, really big. So how do you build something big? How do you think big? You have to find a problem to solve. And the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. So the only way you'll build something big is you find a big problem and focus yourself completely on it. And then you'll be lucky if you build something successfully. But you have to, and that has to be the premise, that you have to find a big problem to solve. And in the beginning, we looked at many ideas as well. And we didn't come out and say we want to build a ground transportation business. And this was one of the ideas that we as consultants had faced a lot in our travels in the Middle East. And we said this is the problem that needs to be solved, and there are technological ways that we can solve it. But we looked at many other problems, and every problem that we looked at, we sized the opportunity. How big is it? Is it a $1 billion opportunity? Is it a $10 billion opportunity? And it's not difficult to size these things, but I encourage all entrepreneurs, if you want to build a big business, then focus on big problems and hence big opportunities. So that was number one for us. We were always thinking, we want to build something big, we want to leave a legacy on the world, and we want to make this region proud. The second, and there was a conversation this morning on exits as well, right? An exit can happen both in the form of an IPO or an acquisition. And I've been in those shoes as well, where you start something and you're looking to get acquired. And I don't believe that that's the right mindset you should go into a startup with. And you should not go into a startup wanting to get acquired. You should always, if an acquisition happens, and it could be good or bad, but if an acquisition happens, that's fine. But if you are building a startup or building an organization with the mindset that you want to get acquired, you'll make a lot of the wrong trade-offs. You'll make a lot of the wrong choices. So, we're all going through this and learning and evolving from the Careem journey. One thing that I've realized is an organization is like a kid. And those of you who have young kids will understand the need or the importance of instilling the right values in your kids at an early age. If you teach your kid, कि यार झूठ नहीं बोलना, and then you recognize and penalize that value, then the kid will grow up with that value and the kid will learn that value. But if you don't teach that kid in the early days, कि यार ये value is important and this is what you should do and this is what you should not do, then the kid will not grow up with the right values. In the same way, organizations are similar. They will have values as well. And if you're building something to flip or building something to exit, you will not consciously think of what are the right values that will make this organization last for decades and centuries to come. There are at least 5,000 companies in the world today that are more than 200 years old. And as we all know, there is none from this region. Right? We have not been building organizations in the way they should be built. A lot of times you're starved of talent, sometimes you're starved of capital, and sometimes you're starved of the right execution. So our mindset from the beginning was, we want to build to last. And this is what we are trying to do. We want to build a legacy, and we want to make sure that we do our best, that best in giving this organization the right values, that it'll last. There are times when I have, we travel a lot. I'm based in Dubai, and we travel a lot in the region, where I've taken flights to go to Riyadh. I'll take a flight from Dubai to Bahrain to Riyadh. And how much money am I trying to save? I'm trying to save 200 riyals or 200 dirhams. And that's not a lot of money. But sometimes the reason I'm doing it is because I don't want people in the company to think, to get the right value, that ownership and frugality is a value that we want to cherish. And if you're not going to demonstrate that value, the organization is not going to see it, and the organization is not adopt that value. So it's very, very important to build an organization to last and have that sort of the aspiration from the beginning. So that's the second thing that I think has worked well for us up until now. The third thing, so now it's very nice to have very nice to think big and very nice to have the aspiration to build to last. But on a day-to-day basis, entrepreneurship is pretty tough, right? Those of you who have built businesses know that day in, day out, it's a lot of hard work. And growth doesn't happen automatically. Growth needs to be curated. You cannot just launch a product in the market and a service in the market and expect that this will take off. Hardly things happen in that way. So growth needs a lot of curation. And the three things that we discovered, and this was all by reading, by talking to people, that we realized that there are three things that we had to do to make growth happen. The first, you cannot improve anything that you cannot measure, right? I'm not saying this, other people have said this. So first you need to measure growth. So we actually at Careem monitor growth every 15 minutes. So right now, Junaid can probably tell you how much Faisalabad has grown week on week from last week right now. And this is sort of the pulse and the rhythm of Careem. Growth is like deep, deep in our DNA. So we monitor growth very, very rapid, like in very small increments, every 15 minutes, every day, every week. And this is sort of the granularity that we operate at the city level. So growth needs to be measured. And there are times that growth doesn't happen, right? I'm sure there are some cities today that are not growing. But I can also tell you that there's someone from Dubai on the phone with some cities that are not growing and asking them, hey, what's happening? And let's try to understand, why are we not growing? Acha, kya masla hai? Is the weather the issue? Is there something wrong with the service? Is the product market fit not sitting well? And then you need to do real-time problem solving to figure out how do you remove the bottlenecks from growth and start growing again. And the third thing that you need to make growth happen is by focusing on problems. A lot of times, and we get this question a lot, right? Because Careem in its current incarnation looks a bit like Uber, which was started before Careem. A lot of people ask us, okay, yeah, is it just a copycat? Have you guys just taken what was working in the West and done it? And we remind them and remind ourselves that no, we actually started with a problem that we as consultants were having traveling the region. And for the first year of Careem, the service was live, but there was no app, there was no on-demand service. We had found a problem that we saw and we had solved it. And that was always the focus of Careem from the beginning, find problems and solve it. Now you can get inspiration, and you should get inspiration from what's happening in the rest of the world, but if that inspiration becomes an obsession, then you're going to miss the boat. You're going to make sure you're going to become something else, and then when that competitor from the West comes into your markets, you will lose out. So growth needs curation. It's a lot of hard work. You need to monitor the growth. You need to do real-time problem solving when growth doesn't happen. And you need to make sure that the focus is on solving the problems that you are seeing in your markets versus trying to making that inspiration into an obsession. So growth is one thing that we've been always focused on. And growth compounds, right? And this is a beautiful thing about growth. If you grow 30%, if you grow 25% month on month, then you grow 10x in a year. And that's what happened in the first 3 years of Careem. The first year, we grew 10x. The second year, we grew 10x. Third year, we grew 10x. And by the third 10x, we were at 100 million sort of valuation. And when we were sitting down to set the target for 2016, कि यार अब 2016 में क्या achieve करना है? We are like 3 साल से we're having 10x. Why should this year not be a 10x? So at the beginning of 2016, we set the target कि यार we should become a $1 billion business by the end of the year. And that's, alhamdulillah, happened. So that every 15-minute monitoring, every week monitoring translates into large numbers very, very quickly. And that's the rhythm and the DNA that we work with. And lastly, and perhaps the most importantly, people are the key. Again, you can have amazing aspirations to wanting to build something to last. You can be very focused on growth. But if you don't have the right people and the right culture, and all of this is completely immaterial, right? There's someone said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's true, right? Like if you don't have the people that will execute the strategy is completely useless. And given the backgrounds that we had coming into Careem, there was a lot of emphasis placed on getting the right people on board. And fortunately for us, us waqt paise nahi the shuru mein, and we had to live with very little funds. So a lot of the people that we hired, we were actually not able to pay them market wages. So if someone was making X, the maximum we could pay them was X divided by 2. And a lot of people we could not hire because we were just not able to pay them competitive market wages. But what happened as a result of it, which is surprising, a bit of a side benefit, a lot of the people that we ended up attracting were people who were not driven by the money, but were driven by the mission of building Careem. So it just so happened that because we were not able to pay people market wages, the only people that we could get were the mission-driven people that we were able to attract, excite, and that bought into the Careem mission, and they came on board, and Careem became what it has become. So people are the key. Time and again, we have realized that if you don't have the right people on board, things will not happen. And you need to get people who are not just capable from a technical standpoint or from whatever they do in their domain standpoint, but they also need to be aligned with the culture of the business, and they need to contribute positively to the culture of the place. So there was a lot of emphasis, and there continues to be a lot of emphasis in getting the right people on board. So the 4 things that have really worked for us, we had big aspirations, so we were always thinking big. We wanted to build a big institution from the region to create a legacy and make the region proud. It was always supposed to be built to last. Even today, we are always thinking, what kind of values do we want to give this organization, and what can we do to impart those values? We focused on growth a lot, and we made sure that we got the right people on board. So I think those are the 4 things that ended up working for us. Now, alhamdulillah, we keep reminding ourselves that, look, people say, congratulations on the success, and we remind ourselves and them that this is a milestone that we have hit. We're still, inshallah, early in this journey of Careem, and there's a long, long road ahead. Let's build an institution that's going to outlast us and outlast generations after us and remains an integral part of the region. I assure you that we'll try our best, and with your support and with your prayers, inshallah, we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mudassir. These are great learnings for us, and I just want to pose a question because a lot of, you made a comment on startups that you should make organizations and not, start a business with a mindset of exiting. And I think this is the most important key takeaway. If you go to Hall 3, you'll see a lot of startups. I'd appreciate if you could repeat there again, because a lot of startups in every other incubator is simply confused because the investor mindset is always asking for exits. So how would you ask, or how would you comment on that? Because most of the startups are very, very confused about how to handle that mindset. So what would you say to that?
Now, this question came up in all of our investor discussions as well. What are the exit possibilities? And we always told investors that, look, we're not building this to be acquired, but if an acquisition were to be an objective, these are the people that could potentially acquire us. But our aspiration and our objective is to remain independent and potentially exit through an IPO versus an acquisition.
Thank you. And I'm going to take the liberty of this platform and ask you a very interesting question because of the recent ban on, there's too much news, too many news alerts in Punjab. I'm from Lahore, and women love Careem because, it's very empowering. And I think you should all clap because if there are females here, if there's one thing that Careem has done is has empowered us in many ways. So the ban that we all want to know about is that what is the story behind the ban? I know that we are short on time, but because there are too many stories loitering around it, we don't want that. We want the right person to answer. What's the story behind the ban?
So, the business we are in is a bit controversial. And it's not just in Pakistan, it's been controversial in many parts of the world as well. But if you break the world down into the developed world and the emerging world, you realize that a lot of the big challenges that companies like us have faced, they've been in the developed world, where there has been a public transportation system, there has been a taxi system, there has been people and industries that were getting disrupted. And of course, the vested interest fights back and tries to protect their economic interest. But if you look at the emerging markets, yes, there has been some noise here and there, but none of the emerging markets have reacted to the extremes that the developed world has reacted to. Because there are two main reasons that emerging markets are embracing this technology like with all might. Number one, like in Pakistan and like in other emerging markets, there is a big youth population that needs to get employed. And a platform like Careem can do wonders and create a lot of jobs for the country and for the region as a whole. We already signed an agreement with the government of Punjab to create 100,000 jobs by 2018. At the Careem level, we have a commitment internally to create 1 million jobs in the entire region by 2018. Now, which other industry will create these kind of jobs? And now look at where these jobs are going to. These jobs are actually building a public transport infrastructure that doesn't exist. Now, Europe and the US, they built this metro system, the train system, and the bus system 100 years ago, and they invested a ton of money in the system at that time, and that has been powering their economies for the last few decades. We never built one. Which of our cities has a train system, a subway system, a proper bus system? So, and it's expensive to build it now, right? It's a big fiscal burden for the government to build a big transportation system. But through platforms like Careem, not only are we creating a lot of jobs, we're actually building a public transport system for the first time in a place like Pakistan. And this is without the government needing to fund it, because it's actually being crowdfunded. It's funded by captains, it's funded by other investors that are buying 2 cars, 3 cars, 4 cars. So ride hailing, if I may say so, is a godsend for Pakistan. And I think the government sees it this way as well. And there were some notices and stuff, but I think this is temporary. We are working with the government of Punjab and other governments at the moment to highlight these benefits, and very soon we'll have a resolution.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time,
Thank you.
and I think this was very informative for all of us.